a divine paradigm of love and universal consciousness, with your host, Janet Kira Lessin and Dr. Sasha Lessin.
Together, we transform the world.
And now, here are your hosts, Janet Kira and Dr. Sasha Lessin.
With my co-host, Dr. Sasha Lessin. And today we interview Bret Shepphard and Ken Johnston. And we're going to discuss Ken's Moon, which is a new book about moon anomalies. And we're also going to talk about the experiences that happened on the moon with this, let me get down here further, just make more sense. Dr. Ken Johnston Sr. is one of 4 civilian astronaut consultant pilots from the Apollo Moon program. He is a retired aerospace engineer, U.S. Marine, and NASA whistleblower. He refused to strictly follow orders and destroy a nearly complete collection of 8x10 glossy photo prints from the Apollo program, photos that are not available from NASA at this time and are of a higher resolution than what is found online. Johnston was born at Fort Sam Houston U.S. Army Air Base in San Antonio, Texas in 1942 and studied at Oklahoma City University. He enlisted in the U.S. Marines in August 1962, reported to Pensacola as a Marine cadet for flight training in September 64, and he left the Marines in August 66. He was hired by Grumman Aircraft as a pilot with an avionics background to become a principal contractor for the Apollo lunar module to assist with cockpit and instrument development and training in Houston. He has described his status at the time as a civilian astronaut consultant pilot. Ken Johnston worked as a contractor from 69 to 72 during the Apollo program, and he was employed by ground and route principal contractors to NASA for management of the Lunar Receiving Laboratory, where all the moon rocks were stored, curated, cataloged, and in some cases distributed to scientists who had successfully applied to carry out analysis in their own labs. An important part of Johnston's duty was to package and ship lunar samples to science labs together with photographs documenting their exact location and orientation in situ. As such, he had in his office several sets of photographs taken by Apollo astronauts with their chest-mounted Hasselblad cameras. When the moon rock distribution wound down, he was instructed by Bud Laskawa, his boss, to destroy what remained of the photo archive, but Johnston kept...
So, Bret, are we dropped off?
I think we're still on.
No, I think we're standing by for a reconnect, so I'm waiting to see I'll see the picture of the studio come on, and then I'll tell you...
All right, Janet, you're live.
Okay, we're live again.
Yeah. So what? If I understand you right, it's not just that there were bases and structures, but that there was a pattern that had a hidden, deeper message when you started looking at the pixels. Am I getting you right?
Oh, yes, that is exactly right. It is like looking at the morphogenic field firsthand. For me as an artist, that's exactly what it's like.
Uh-huh.
It's
so it's like looking at the hologram of existence.
Yes, it's like when you look at one of these images as an artist, and you're ignoring the subject matter that's in the background or the intended subject of the image. You start to see the pixels. When you go in and kind of zoom in. Sometimes you don't even have to zoom in. You can see just like what they call pareidolia, or just like you would look at a tree or the sky or something, and you start making patterns with your mind, like a dog or a face or this or that. Well, these patterns are very complex. Some of them, in one image, for instance, is the whole entire Greek pantheon. I say Pelagian occasionally, but nobody knows what that means. It is like ancient Greek stuff.
So it's pre-Greek.
Yes, it's pre-Greek. They don't show the people wearing like skirts or something, like it's warm weather. They're showing them in bear skins, like it's cold. You know.
So are these images going to be coming out in these books that are coming out soon?
Yes, it is the subject matter of my art that I will probably be doing the rest of my life. These I've got the subject matter, but people are having a hard time seeing these things. So the only way to really bring them out is artistically.
Yeah, this makes so much sense. On Earth, Ningishita, when he designed various pyramids and stuff, was coding all kinds of things in the geography. Nassim Harriman and others have seen that the patterns that are there in the structures themselves are the patterns that give you the keys to everything in the universe and its energy.
Yes, they did an experiment in the 1800s when they were listening to signals and frequencies from Mars. They were literally pointing, the big array at Mars, and they were collecting data. And what they found was the sounds, the frequencies that were coming in, were making pictographs. And they saw this, and I literally studied one of those pictographs, and I saw all kinds of beings. They were really trying to communicate graphically.
Yes, in the ancient literature, it talks about them using the moisture and air to make snow, like ice circles as signaling.
Oh yeah, I'm writing a book about all of these things in detail, and some more detail about the process that I use and the digital process that was used by NASA to actually put these pictures online in a book called Digital Moon. And people can go to digitalmoonbook.com and get some more information. The book isn't out yet because I've still got some more information to add to it.
Cool.
Great. So then, what else would you like to tell us before we bring on Ken?
Oh gosh, I would just like to say that the things that I've seen in his images are amazing. They're literally, without any doubt, lunar ruins.
Yes.
On the horizon.
Yes.
No doubt in my mind.
So,
and also modern structures. There's a modern array on the surface of the moon in this one image that Ken he'd love to talk about all that.
Oh, great. Yeah, I'm really curious about the ruins because they might be going back to when Enki and Marduk were up there in Nanar, so that might be an ancient Anunnaki city. All right. So, is Ken there? Ken, are you there?
I certainly am.
Hi, Ken. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Janet and Sasha, for having me on.
Oh, we're really delighted that you're here.
Again, yeah.
So we're excited to hear about your discoveries. I know you and Ken and Karen is part of the team as well, have been working very hard to get these books together and edited and formatted. It's a big process. So where would you like to start? And we'll go back and forth, Bret, and feel free to butt in whenever you have a piece that's relevant. But go ahead, Ken. Where would you like to start?
Sure. I think probably one of the quickest, easiest things to do right now, if anybody wants to go to KenJohnstonMedia.com, then they can then track in and follow where we are. We've actually got 2 books already released in digital or electronic ebook form, and the first one really is, and they're all under the heading name Ken's Moon. The first one is an autobiography and covers my whole history from the time I was born all the way up till going to work at NASA, and we now are putting an addendum to that. So all the people that have already bought that book are going to wind up getting an update with all the latest information, a few more discoveries. Things are happening so fast with this soft disclosure that it's amazing that I'm at the place where I'm being a part of what's happening. It's almost like, hearing about the World Trade Center coming down, and I know exactly where I was standing and what happened. This is really a great experience.
Soft disclosure? Say some more about soft disclosure.
Explain what you mean by soft disclosure.
Well, my only understanding of soft disclosure is that what I've been talking about for ever since 1995, when I ran into Mr. Richard Hoagland at a conference, and he came over with a team, and they looked at the archive, and they were amazed. That's when they said the only way to keep me safe was to make me public, and they took me to the National Press Conference a couple of times, and I've been all over the world in different locations. And the reason being, there have been people that think that if they keep their mouth shut about the things that we signed, that we were our top secret clearance, that we're safe doing that. Well, we're at a point now where you're only going to be safe if you come out public and get enough information. Because something happens to me, then there's going to be so much investigation knowing what's happening, and that would defeat the whole purpose. That I think the government is now in a position where they're trying to figure out how we can now come forward with the information and that we now know that's been kept secret all these years. And it goes all the way back to the Brookings Institute report that I believe it was President Eisenhower requested that, where they did an analysis. By the way, that the Brookings Institute report was published in the New York Times back in the late 50s, and it's still available on archives. You can go on the internet and find anything. But anyway, so the point was that if we did discover anything extraterrestrial in past or present that it needed, we'd probably find it on Mars, the Earth, or the Moon, and it should be kept secret because people couldn't deal with it. And of course, you're looking at the times when the War of the Worlds was played on radio and people panicked, thinking we were being attacked by aliens, to the point now where an example is if a large craft landed on the White House lawn and a big fuzzy character stepped out of it, a little kid would say, "Look, Mommy, there's the Cookie Monster. He's my friend." So we've made a lot of progress. So now we're at the point where we're looking at, the NASA and those did what they were supposed to do to protect the government and the society of what we had at the time. But yet the only way that we can advance or go forward now is to get the truth out there. So it's been quite an experience for me that for some reason, and a lot of things that I'll talk to Dr. Lessin about, it hopefully is some of the other experiences. Now let's talk about the books. The first book, as I said, was the autobiography. The second book that we got out is the archive. It's not the archive. Is that the archive? I'm sorry? Oh, the mission reports. It's a little over 800 some odd pages long.
Wow.
And at the end of each mission, a report was issued within about 2 weeks, and it was a great deal of detail that now if you try to get a copy of a mission report for one of the Apollo missions, so much of that stuff has been taken out or changed or what have you. But to make it interesting, by going to KenJohnstonMedia.com, you can actually get a free copy of the anomaly reports, and it's about 16 pages and some of the more recent anomalies that have been discovered. Now, then the next book coming out is going to be the complete archive, everything that I collected and saved, being made available to the public so that they can have a chance to look at it themselves. And we purposely are not disclosing or looking at all the different anomalies because we want everybody to have the thrill and the opportunity of looking at the real pictures made from the original negatives and being able to identify and find something on the moon that ordinarily you can't find if you order a picture. And a perfect example that Bret was talking about, and this is Apollo picture AS-15, which is Apollo 15-88, that's the mag. And so the whole thing is AS-15-88-11970. That's a picture of the command and service module, being approached by the lunar module during Apollo 15. And all these years, 40-plus years, I looked at that at the command module and what they were doing, rendezvousing in space around the moon. Nor did I ever look down below on the lunar surface until Bret pointed it out to me. And my God, there is a lunar base on the surface with more than a dozen different domes and several large dome antennas that look very similar, like you would have a radar dome for weather or what have you on the Earth, but gigantic in size. That picture is now kind of the swan song of what you're going to be able to see when you really start looking at some of the pictures that I've saved. It just blows my mind that I never looked at it and noticed it over all these years.
Wow. And that picture is available on this Lunar Anomalies report?
It sure is.
Okay, and the contrasting NASA release, how is that the same or different?
Well, if you've ever used a copy machine and you made a copy, and then you made a copy of that copy, and a copy of the copy of the copy of the copy, pretty soon there's so little detail in there. Oh, yeah, it's a cute little picture, but is there any real detail? There isn't. But then when you're looking at the stuff that I saved, and I'll go into detail if you want me to about how come I wound up with all of this stuff.
Yes,
Yeah,
it's
that'd
a
be
great story.
interesting, Yes.
Okay. Anyway, the detail is there, and even if you look at the pictures, the type of lighting and coloration and stuff, and the emulsion of the negatives in the pictures, so much information is there that you don't see with your normal eye unless you shift the color spectrum or what have you a little bit, and you go, oh my goodness, would you look what's there. Now, why did I come forward and where did I come up with this stuff? We'll skip how I wound up, that's in the autobiography, but working at NASA at the Johnston Space Center, I was with the Grumman Aerospace Corporation as one of their first 4 civilian astronauts, and you read all that part up there earlier about my bio. And at the Lunar Receiving Laboratory, became the director of the Data and Photo Control Department, which was my responsibility to maintain in filing cabinets, about 10 different filing cabinets of all the lunar surface pictures from each mission and pictures that were taken from orbit, and then access, of course, to the film was available there. And the reason I had that was when we had contributing scientists from around the world that would come to the Johnson Space Center to pick up their samples of lunar rocks, material, what have you, they would want pictures taken from orbit of the terrain, the area where we landed and where that sample came from, as well as photographs that the astronauts took with their Hasselblad cameras on the lunar surface as they picked up each one of those samples. So I had the complete archive. And whenever I would order a new set, I generally would order an extra copy, and that I was keeping for my own personal historical records for my family for years and years. So it built up a pretty large private collection. And then, we were always so involved with what was going on that we'd see things and maybe hear things that we wanted to check out, but the contracts would end about every 2 to 3 years, and we'd get laid off and had to go work at another company. Working as a contractor is so much different than working as a government employee. If you're a government employee and you've got your probationary period, it almost takes an act of Congress to get you fired. Well, simple enough with the space program. Once the contract was over, everybody got laid off. You got to get rehired by somebody else. So anyway, I kept those for decades in filing in a large safe I had, and some of I would keep it a lot of times in banks and vaults, so that and they were all kept inside of document protectors to keep the oxygen and air away. So these pictures are still in almost immaculate. And why did I do that? I don't know. It's just that I guess I'm kind of a pack rat, but I just felt it was worthwhile to have a beautiful collection.
Right. Well, we're glad you did.
A great spirit said that you should share this with the world.
Well, that has come about, and it's very strange. And I do give credit to Richard Hogan and them for putting me on that track and basically keeping me relatively safe by putting me out there. But it wasn't. I kept saying all along that, well, one of these days I need to make this stuff available to everybody. And so you're thinking from 1995 now up to 2016 until. And this is something I want to research and find out, because there have been events that have happened in my life. We're talking about now, book number 4 is going to be my personal experience, and it goes back to questioning what took place whenever I was in first or second grade, which may well have become a contact. And in fact, let me put on an experience. I, at the age of 11, was becoming a qualified hypnotist, and I did this all the way up through college, helping students study and learn to pass exams and things. And in the process, you learn enough about hypnosis that you want to protect yourself. And so I created a key phrase to keep myself from being able to be hypnotized. But those key phrases I still remember, and hopefully I'll be able to determine how much of my memory is just things that were because of my excitement in science fiction or what have you, or these events actually really happened. And I'm really looking forward to working with you on that.
Yeah, we're going to be doing that this coming week at the UFO Congress and we're going to meet. All of us are going to meet. We're very excited. So, anyway, do you want to? Where do you want to go? You have so much to cover.
You know what is somewhere you were telling me about, maybe it was Bret, about painting over evidence before putting it public.
Right. And when you were talking a little bit earlier about the anomalies, and particularly the big one that I gave you the photo number on, those are something that is a base that is still active. It was active at the time. And
yeah, so let's talk about that. It's on the Breakaway book. I think it's this image that's I guess it's a page number 247. It looks like a bunch of round globes on, and they're definitely in a pattern. So is that the base? And it looks very active. It looks like it's lit up.
Right. Now, okay. Now, but then let's step back before we got to this stage, because this has just been very recent, within the last week or two, that we've discovered that particular anomaly. The pictures. All right. Now, let's go back. My experience as a Marine, and went through pilot training at Pensacola. Anyway, I also was a pretty good expert at running 16 millimeter cameras and projectors, and we had what we call a gun sequence camera, which in the military they had cameras mounted in the wings of airplane, and when they would fire, rockets or 50 millimeter caliber machine guns at other targets, these cameras would be taking pictures so they could analyze them later. Well, as the director of the Data and Photo Control Department, working with all the different scientists and engineers there, one particular at the Lunar and Planetary Science Building, which was the old mansion, Jim West Mansion, there just outside of NASA's main campus. Dr. Thornton Page was the director in charge of the Lunar and Planetary Science scientists, and he contacted me at the LRL, Lunar Signal Laboratory, and asked me to go to the photo lab and check out a specific reel of film that was photographed during Apollo 14 and set up a showing for him and some of the other scientists. And being a good little robot, I went to the photo lab, checked. You have to check into the front and the middle and then get into the back before you can get the actual reels. And I took that over to the building next door to Mission Control, set up a showing in the main conference room for Dr. Page and his team. And I'm showing this film, and we're primarily we were mapping the backside of the moon. And so here we're coming up on a crater, Tsiolkovsky, and at that particular time of the lunar cycle, half of the crater was in shadow because of the sun angle coming in at about 45 degrees. Anyway, we're approaching that, and in the dark shadowed area, there was a cluster of 5 illuminated domes. Now, I explain this by saying, if you'll take your hand, turn your hand palm up, then bring all of your fingers together in one little tight little bump, you can see 5 little balls or little bulges there. And if you can imagine, in a dark shadowed area, those are all illuminated from the inside with somewhat of an opaque exterior. And then in one of them that's closest to the rim, from going up towards the rim, was a column of like steam or something coming straight up from one of those domes. I mean, Dr. Page had me stop the camera, the projector, freeze it, back up, come in several times, and you can do that with a gun sequence camera. You can zoom in. I would zoom in, back up, go back and come in 2 frames at a time or 4 frames at a time. Finally, he had me stop. He turned to the other 6 scientists and says, "Well, boys, what do you think of that?" And they all laughed. And, like I said, inside joke, they all knew the joke. I was so excited that here I was looking at evidence of the existence of because here we are, we're just, like the 3rd time we've been to the moon. I'm excited about it, and they're laughing about it, and they're talking. Dr. Page says, "Okay, finish the reel." I finished it, and I'm packing it up, and they're all talking and laughing over there. And then they leave, I leave. I take the film back to the photo lab, and I go through the front. I'm going into the middle room. Now, in the middle, you have to have a clearance, and you can request pictures and films and look at them there. and do your research, or if you have a top secret clearance, which you could go in further back in storage. Well, when I went into the middle room, there was what I call a light table. It's a table about 3 by 4 foot square, nearly square, with a illuminated light from behind, so you could lay negatives on top, and they would be illuminated for you to see. And there were 3 people there, 2 men and one lady, and they were leaning over with magnifying glasses, and they were painting and touching up different things. Now, mind you, we didn't have computers like we do today, where we could Photoshop things. We went in literally and we painted. So they had 8 by 10 enlargements of the negatives, and they were painting these things out. And I was caught off guard. I said, "Well, what are you folks doing?" And one guy quipped. He says, "We're professional strippers." And the lady says, "No," says what we're stripping out. We're painting out stars and things along the horizon, stuff that would be confusing to people. We don't want them to enjoy looking at the pictures. So I went and checked the reel of film back in, and Dr. Page had already set me up to show that same reel the next day in the main auditorium at the Johnston Space Center, and to the rank and file, to the regular engineers, the scientists, the janitors, you name it, during their lunch break. And so the next day I check out the reel 24 hours later, and I set it all up, and I'm showing the film. I have my brother, Dr. A.R. Johnston, there, and mind you, I kept this a secret for 24 hours, just bouncing off the cushions, knowing that I'm going to show the world that we're not alone, that there's evidence of extraterrestrial life or somebody on the moon.
Yeah.
And so here we're approaching that crater, and and there's the crater, and there's the shadowed part, and there's nothing there.
Oh,
and
God.
I stopped the camera, told the audience, I said, I'm having technical difficulties, stand by. And I took the film out. I went through it. I have white gloves on, and I'm looking, trying to see if I could find where they cut or spliced. There was no evidence that they had cut or spliced, or that any of the teeth marks didn't line up perfectly, which means within 24 hours they had to have taken the original, made a copy, cut that part out, enlarged it, painted them out, put them back in one, and then made a complete duplicate all over for me to use the next day. And I can say that because when I finished showing that, I put it back and I finished showing for everybody. They were excited because they were looking at pictures on the backside of the moon. They just thought that was great. And I'm shocked that it's not there. So I take the reel back to the photo lab, and I check it in. I'm headed back to my office at the Lunar Receiving Laboratory, and I run into Dr. Page outside. And for people who don't know who Dr. Page is, Bret can go into detail in a minute about who he really is, but he had lost an eye, and he had a patch like a pirate over his left eye. And so I saw Dr. Page, and I said, "Dr. Page, what happened to those domes, those things we saw on the backside of the moon?" He looked at me, and he closed that one eye for a couple of seconds, opened it. He says, "There was never anything there."
Oh, boy.
Boy. And I was shocked. I thought, boy, I'll get a chance to check in on this later. But then again, cutbacks, layoffs, rifts, they call it, reduction in force, kept happening to everybody. And so I never had the opportunity to go back and try to find that reel or get someone that could tell me more about it. Now, right now would be a great time for Bret to step in and tell him what he discovered about Dr. Page.
Cool. Bret.
Hello.
What about Page?
Yes, Dr. Thorton Page. He was on the Robertson panel with Carl Sagan and other scientists. And their sole purpose, their job, was to debunk UFOs or the thought of aliens or anything out of the public mind, to, basically rape public perception. So we, wouldn't think about these scary space aliens or something. There was also another reason. It was a continuity issue back then during the Apollo program. People stepped in, think tank people and whatnot, because especially, based on the Brookings report, they did not want the things to get out of hand with religion, with the financial system, with any politics or anything like that. So they were trying to keep continuity of government. And that was the sole purpose of the Robertson panel in the media.
Wow. Disinformation agents
trying to divert attention from what was really going on. Some kind of excuse, it sounds to me, about not panicking people. What was the real reason, do you think?
Right. Yeah, the real reason was absolutely to keep not just continuity of government, but to keep continuity of this whole class system, you know. So that was the real reason, I believe, is to keep things intact for, you know, the few that are enjoying the way things are, you know.
Yeah.
That's one reason. The other reason was they did not want, for us to enjoy some of the technologies that they knew about. That was common knowledge to them within their little groups. And, you know, some of these things were things that were very clearly invented, you know, by the Apollo program just to get people onto the moon. Some of the battery-operated recyclable energy systems, you know, that we had all the way back in the 60s that we could have been using, we could use today, you know. So there were some of those issues, you know. They have the world on fossil fuel when they know darn well they can use, you know, anti-gravity type machines, you know.
Zero-point energy.
Yeah.
So control and pollute.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
It's control and pollute.
Yeah. I think something important to add here, Sasha, is that, you know, I love NASA and what we accomplished and what we did, and I understand completely that what was being done was with the best interest in mankind at the time.
Yes, I believe that too, yes.
And now, not to condemn or what have you, but to help NASA and the government to find a way that they can then come out with the information. That's why we're saying soft disclosure, and then it's building momentum. I mean, it's taking on a life of its own. That now the government can say, yes, that's true, but here's more information. And I think we're right at the cusp of, we call it an explosion of knowledge.
Yes, they must be allowing it. They're allowing it. Yeah, I see what you're saying.
One of the things that I've noticed as a pattern and whatnot is, you know how you use reverse psychology, you know, for kids, and you tell them, okay, there's Santa Claus or whatever, but when the time comes, you say there's no more Santa Claus, you know. Basically, that's what they've been doing with us, and the simple fact that there are debunkers, they're the ones that are actually putting any reasonable doubt or they're putting in the minds of the public that there may be UFOs and aliens. And they're saying, don't look at that UFO, don't look at those aliens. Well, that's the same thing as telling them to do that.
Right.
Right, they're calling attention. Yeah,
don't
you're
look
right.
at the elephant.
Right.
Yeah, don't look at it. It's not there. The subconscious doesn't recognize no or not. So they're saying it's there. Yeah.
So Ken, when you hung out with this Page guy and you could feel his heart chakra, was he coming from a loving space or a fearful? Where was he coming from? What did you sense?
I think it to me, thinking back right now about the comments that he made, he was a very open, friendly type person, and I think it was more of a humorous, because at the time I was actually on the inside, and certainly enough that because of my clearance and all, that they trusted me to pull the film out and show it to a collect, very small little group. So whenever I asked what happened to it, it was humorous, like he expected me to understand, you know, there was never anything there.
Gotcha.
So you think that there were people in NASA that really had good intentions, that they believed that releasing this information too soon would be harmful to the American society at the time? Is that what you're saying?
The economics of the world, yeah.
The economics?
Here's something that I haven't told too many times, and that is because I had that collection of all of the photos and films and things from each one of the missions there at the Lunar Receiving Laboratory. On a particular day, my immediate lead, I was with the Brown and Root Northrop Corporation at the time, because once we landed on the moon, Grumman laid off almost 30,000 employees nationwide. Anyway, and I moved over to the Lunar Receiving Laboratory working as a contractor for BRN down in Northrop. Anyway, so I had this whole office of the Data Photo Control Department, my responsibility, and I've had debunkers came in. Oh, well, you were never there. Well, I've got the letters of commendation. I even received a $1,000 bonus for coming up with a better way of using color negatives to produce black and white pictures and things on, which has saved a tremendous amount of money. Anyway, Mr. Bud Lascala, who was my immediate supervisor for BRN, came into the office. He says, Ken, you need to get rid of all of the copies, except just keep one copy. That's all you need. And I said, well, wait a minute. Why don't we donate those to some of the universities that have science departments that would love to have them? He says, no, you've been told to destroy them. Get rid of them. And I argued with him, and he kept arguing back. He says, no, it came from up high, that's what they want you to do, is get rid of them. It just, all you need is one copy. We don't need to archive. We don't need to keep that many around. And, yeah, and I finally gave in. But he finally said, I don't care what you do, just get rid of them. And I took that as a tacit permission for me to do what I want to do. So I threw 3 complete sets into the density dumpsters. Now, mind you, since then, through Donna Hare, she said that she actually found all these pictures in the dumpster, which means that she may be the one that received the ones that I threw away. Anyway, so I threw away 3 of them. I kept one complete set that I Lordy, in 1995, when I ran into Mr. Richard Hoagland, I donated those to Oklahoma City University, to their science department. And whenever Mr. Hoagland came up, they sent me back to OCU. And actually, it was the same week that the federal building had been blown up there in Oklahoma City. And so things were pretty tight. But I was able to recover a lot more of that archive as well. But my own personal collection and archive, I had kept for all of these years, 45 plus years.
Yeah.
Thank God I did. Now they're available that we can put them out. Now the whole public, the world, is going to get a chance to have their opportunity to look at what really is there.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thanks. You're a real hero, bro. Thank you so much.
I'm delighted that I'm a part of a team like working with Karen and Bret, because they've, as I said earlier, I'm an engineer, a pilot, and I never looked at the pictures other than looking, oh, that's a pretty picture of all the craters. Oh, that's a great picture of the command module coming around. Those weren't the things that I was looking at. Now, when Mr. Hoagland came over with his team that day, my wife was looking at the pictures while they were talking, and all of a sudden she says, what's this thing reflecting in the visor of the astronaut?
Oh,
and
yes. That's a wonderful picture.
Yeah. And the whole thing is, we now coined a little phrase, if you really want to know what the guys on the moon were looking at, look in the visor of the one getting his picture taken. Because what you want to know is behind the one taking the picture. And that has led to the discovery of things in the lunar sky, if you want to call it sky, as well as that. So this data, everything's coming out in its own time, and it's things have been programmed. And boy, am I looking forward to regressing back and finding out how much of this stuff.
There was on the internet all over for a while an alternate film that a movie producer said he had made in case the mission had blown up and the astronauts got killed. They already had filmed them in advance just in case. I don't know if you hit any of that material.
And I don't doubt that at all, because they presidents and congressmen, they have alternative speeches prepared in the event something goes wrong, and there probably was a movie made that showed that they landed and everything else, but they died and something happened.
Right. Here it is.
If you were successful at it, that wasn't the case.
So tell us about this Matt Jeffries Tribble station.
Oh, okay. Now that was in the visor of the astronaut that my wife had discovered, and then while we've been over here working on the books now, and I was delighted. That's the other thing. I have no idea how it wound up that Karen and Bret and I all got pulled together as a team. I mean, that to me is fascinating to begin with. And then they needed to leave Texarkana, and they didn't know what they were going to do because of the situation they had going there. And I said, well, there's an option. I can come and get you. I have a 16-foot trailer, and we can load all your stuff, and we can bring you here and then take you up to Washington, where her daughter is. And so I just took up and drove and picked them up and drove them back here on my birthday last year in October. And now we're within 5 minutes of each other, and we're working on these. And Karen's looking at the picture that my wife had saw. Boy, my English is going bad. My wife had seen. And here's this image up in the top left corner of the astronaut's visor. And she got to look at it, and she said, this looks like the space station in Star Trek. They showed the little, what was that one called?
It was The Trouble with Tribbles, and the designer was Matt Jeffries. And let me jump in, because this is really interesting.
This is Karen.
Janet and I are Trekkies, so we've talked about this. But what happened is that it was written by, that episode was written by a gentleman and then kind of overtaken by Robert Heinlein. And as I've been doing, this report's going to come out, it's going to be an addendum to Bret's book. I dug more into this and found out, of course, that Gene Roddenberry was many times given information to share on Star Trek as part of earlier, soft disclosure. And Heinlein was friends with Jack Parsons at JPL. So the chances that Robert Heinlein was getting insider information, there's a connection there. In other words, there's a plausibility that object was in the sky, that Heinlein and other science fiction writers and producers were shown those images. And in this particular episode, which is the number one most popular episode of that original Star Trek series, it's that station, that space station they go to, and it looks like a reverse image of that exact same thing. And we have on KenJohnstonMedia.com, we have a free breakout report, the Lunar Anomaly report, that we just put up today, so people can see these anomalies, and it's very remarkable. And I'll have continuing information as I research it. And I'll give the phone back to Ken. Love you guys. Bye.
Love you, Karen. Thanks for popping in.
It's amazing that we all have a bit and piece of the puzzle, and we're all coming together. And I'm so delighted that Donna Hare now is willing to come forward now and have her autobiography and her records brought public, as well as, what's the other gentleman's name that I didn't know?
Keith Landley.
Okay, Keith Landley. And that's not, he's not going to be down in...
Keith Landley and Carl Wolf.
Yes.
Carl,
there you go.
Wow.
And a dumper dive.
Yeah, Donna Hare, the dumpster diver. Thank God she was. Thank God.
I love it. I was accused of being a dumpster diver back in the days at Norman at Oklahoma University. That's great. I love the comment.
Yeah, my mother was a dumpster diver. Boy, she brought home some treasures. So we have about 2 minutes, and we'll be coming up on a commercial break. So we'll cover the stuff about your personal autobiography the second hour. What can we wrap up in 2 minutes on this part one of the show?
Well,
Wait, what?
We all have had fantastic experiences, and some of them may have been real. And I'm willing now to come forward and talk about those, and we'll see what book number 5 is going to be about.
Right. So you have all these books, and the team is producing them, and they're coming out first as ebooks. Is that correct? And then the one with the photos, that's probably going to be like $100 tabletop book with do you have a one with full color that might be in the making somewhere in time?
Absolutely. The ebook right now is the best way to come out, particularly when we're having the amount of detail in some of these pictures. And as soon as we get to this point, we're going to go. We're looking at Create Space as a publisher for the hard copies. And most people, a lot of people like me, old-fashioned, we like to have a piece of paper, something in our hand, and those will be autographed, whatever. But then people that get them with my email address that we're using for this setup is Ken Johnston Sr. at gmail.com, and that's an email. I'll try to answer every single email that I get on that. And it's been busy,
wonderful! So you can talk to Ken personally in private. Is it Ken Johnston with a T? And then
it's Scottish. It's the Scottish man with the Johnston key.
The Johnston. And is it SR for senior or senior spelled out?
Nope, just Ken Johnston, SR, at gmail.com.
Could an ordinary person with a modest telescope observe things with their telescope on the surface of the moon and treat them photographically and discover stuff?
Now, that's more of an answer that Bret could give on that. I mean, yes, with just a modest telescope. I have a friend who's got a 17-inch, and a lot of the things I see is they'll see light flashes and things happening on the moon. So there's still activity on the moon. I mean, Inky and them may still be checking on us there.
They may. Okay, well, I don't hear our music, so... Oh. Anyway, it should be any second now. So when we come back, we're going to talk about Ken's personal autobiography, and I closed my windows here. I'm on this teeny tiny screen. And let's see. There's our music. Yay, music. Thank you, everybody. We'll be back in just a couple minutes, 3 minutes. Aloha, everyone, and welcome back to the Sacred Matrix on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. And I am your host, Janet Kerr Lessin, here with my co-host, Dr. Sasha Lessin, and we are interviewing Bret Shepphard and Ken Johnston Sr. And before we get back to our show, I'd like to remind everybody to please go over to that donation button on freedomslip.com and make your donation. $1, $5, $15, $20, $100, whatever you can afford would be greatly appreciated. We do thank you very much for your donation, and we appreciate your donations, which allow us and the people at Revolution Radio to bring you shows like ours and the other shows on Schedule A and Studio A and Studio B. Please do take a look at the schedule, and you'll see all the incredible shows on Revolution Radio. So, Dr. Lessin, would you like to say something before we come back with Ken and Bret?
It's just a time that we just get the facts and just stop mooning about them.
Ha, ha, ha. Okay. Well, we want to get into the meat of Ken's story, but before we get back to Ken, what would you like to say, Bret? You've been a little bit quiet. We'll get some information out of you, and then back to Ken's story and how he came to be Ken.
Oh yeah. Well, you know, there's a lot to this, you know, and I've been, you know, talking to debunkers the last couple of days to see what their perspective is, you know.
Oh, block them.
That's how I kind of figured some of this stuff out. I think there is an intentional soft disclosure, you know, from the black ops type community, you know, so to speak, or the higher up families or whatever you want to call them. Mm-hmm. And I think there is a need, you know, in society today to come out with the real story.
Yeah.
Even if they don't actually know for sure if there are aliens or UFOs are real, or of course UFOs is, you know, unidentified, you know, whatever. But even if they don't exactly know that, the possibility is there, and that possibility should be released to the public.
I agree. So you're saying the debunkers helped you get clarity on this issue, and how was that?
Yes, they actually did. They actually did. In fact, it's Ken Johnston's #1 debunker. I don't need to keep saying his name. Everybody knows who I'm talking about. But yes, he's a very nice guy. You know, maybe he doesn't believe the same thing we do, but he's a nice guy. You know, and I had a healthy debate with him about Ken. You know,
good.
and I learned a lot. It's always good to know what the people are, what shoes they're wearing, so to speak. You know.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
You know, it seems to me that once you start disclosure, you'll see things. You mentioned the Oklahoma City bombing and a number of false flags that imply that the people that have this information have information about murders and genocide and terrible things, and that the people are not just covering up something because they're afraid of, oh my God, aliens, but because they've actually been part of war and murder that they've perpetrated by what they've hidden, in my humble opinion.
Right.
Well, yes, and that is part of our society growing, and instead of looking back or something, to actually move forward and learn from our history.
All right. Well, let's go back to where we left everybody dangling before the break. Is
the visor.
Well, no, we were talking about the visor. Well, what I'm drawn to is, I think, Ken, you said there was something that happened, when you were 8 or something?
Oh, yeah.
It was like a critical incident that helped shape your future and who you are. Would you share that? And correct me if I'm wrong.
I am now coming out and sharing things that I've not disclosed to anybody because of primarily credibility. Now, as you've gleaned from some of the experiences that I've had, and I think Karen is the one responsible for coming up with saying, being at the right place at the right time with the right stuff to do the right thing. But that's kind of a coin off of Alan Shepard's book, The Right Stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
When you and they've kind of forced me to do this, to go back and look at my life, and I encourage everybody to write an autobiography, because it is the way that you can clear up things in your past that need to be cleared up and get clear up. I mean, I've had people come to me and say, "Oh, well, you've led such a serendipitous life. Oh, it's been so what?" I said, don't judge an Indian till you've walked a mile in his moccasins. I mean, and don't take this wrong. My mother was a beautiful woman. My dad was killed as a bomber pilot in World War II. She married Captain Roger Walmerdorf, a Marine Corps captain from Guadalcanal. He wound up with an infection in his inner ear, getting into his brain. He committed suicide. And my mother wound up being married 12 times to 8 different men. And I have been beat with razor straps and various things like that in my life. And I tell people, I said, what happened to you is not quite as important as how you dealt with it, because how you deal with it is what makes you who you are.
Yeah.
Right.
That brings me to the events in my life that I've looked back on, and I've always thought they really happened. Or now, back in the days when people were panicked because of the War of the Worlds, and then they had the movie The Blob that came out, was absorbing everybody, and all these science fiction things, to the point to where now finally that if a large craft landed on the White House lawn and this big fuzzy character came out, a little kid say, "Mommy, look, there's a Cookie Monster. He's my friend." So, we have matured a bit, although we have this insanity going on in the world that is trying to destroy our history, our ancient East, Mesopotamian and Egypt. I mean, ISIS, I'm not terrified by it, but I am so enraged at the destruction that's being take place of our history. So
that pisses me off
I
too.
dream of the time when perhaps the craft lands and say Yankee comes out and says, "Okay, get all of your leaders, all your religious leaders, bring them here. We're going to tell you what really happened, what has taken place over the last X thousands of years, and why we are where we are today." But looking at the insanity of religion, now I have a doctorate in theology where I've studied the majority of the major religions. People are so brainwashed that they're not, the majority of them, not maybe the majority of them are ready, I hope so, that they wouldn't even believe that if, God himself came and told them.
I think they're ready. We got over Santa Claus, like was said earlier. We'll get over all this stuff. We're very adaptable. We have to be. That's why we're still here.
Americans have powerful intellects, and once we present the evidence and the logic that accounts for the data better than anything else, and you're part of it, they can't ignore what their intellects take in, because we're a smart species. That's what I think.
Well, Sasha, unfortunately, the Flat Earth Society is still going strong, and unfortunately, they are reproducing.
I've seen that, and it's really, they have all these YouTubes and this logic, and they use bridges, and it's supposed to be, math. It's like, what? But do you have pictures from the Earth that will be released that will show that this is not a flat Earth. What shape
they're
is
all, yeah. The others are afraid of things like the movie The Thing. You know, that's whatever they think, whatever we deal with in the form of extraterrestrials is going to be negative. Well, okay, you asked what I had in my youth as a kid,
back to that.
about 7 or 8 years old, in this little town called Hart, H-A-R-T, Texas. The population was about 560 people, and our house was would be a city block. There was no blocks there. It was just from where the school. And school went from first grade all the way up through high school in one building. Okay,
Right.
that's how small we were. In my vision, a craft landed in the big wide open field out behind our house, and I was woken up, and my mother and neighbors, everybody in cars, they came and they parked behind our house. They were all looking at this craft, and there was a shimmering curtain type thing, haze around it. You could see through it and everything else, but you could tell it was something like vibrating light. And then the door opens, and the steps come down, and this person looked like a typical human being, more of an Aryan type person, looking around at the crowd and pointed at me and motioned for me to come forward. And everybody else started backing up, and they got in the cars, they ran away, and I just walked straight over, and right where we were standing, the shimmering curtain parted, and kind of like opening up a waterfall and parting it with a big boulder so you could walk inside the cave behind it. And I walked upstairs, and there were a group of people started kind of like applauding and smiling that I was coming on board. That was the start of it. But for years, I would have continuations of the events that took place after that, of actually going with them back to their planet, what have you, being in school, being trained to become an ambassador between their race and our races, and even going up to a large space station where there were other species of extraterrestrials, and even went through one of the labs where we could see entities being cloned or whatever, babies in bottles, if you want to call it that.
Yeah.
These events were very, very powerful in my memory, and I was even taught how to fly one of the smaller crafts, and at one point I tried to fly it back to Earth to go back and see my family, and of course I got stopped. And so all of these things have been going through my mind all these years, and I've kept them quiet. There was an event that took place shortly after that, and no, I take that back. This was before then. Excuse me. This would have been about 1948. A huge thunderstorm out in the country farm where we were at the time, and our neighbor that next morning called. Now, mind you, people don't know what these phones were that hang on the wall that has a crank on it.
Right.
We actually have those. That's how far back I go. He called to tell us that either lightning something hit about right out from our house in his field, and so my two brothers, AR and Jimmy, and we put on our galoshes and our raincoats, and we went out. Well, AR was the oldest. He's 5 years older than me. He's passed away. Jimmy was the middle, 17 months older than me. Well, AR was very sophisticated. He wasn't going to run, and Jimmy was my competition, and I had to outrun him. So I ran out to the field about 50 yards from our house, and I came to this clearing, or not a clearing. This was a field of maize, probably about 2 feet tall, and this area, a circular area where it was all smashed down, and I'm there, and I'm looking directly across, and there's this huge bird, looks like a whooping crane, and it turns its head, looks at me, turns its head forward, starts trotting across the circle, opening its wings, takes a couple of flaps, and it vanishes. Now,
Wow.
AR and Jimmy show up about the same time, right after that, and I asked them, did you see that? Did you see it? Did you see that? And neither one of them saw it. Now, that was 1948. Now,
What did the bird look like? Tell me some more about the bird, please.
It's like a whooping crane or something.
Well, the bird stood taller than I was, and I identified it back then as what we would call a whooping crane. They almost became extinct, and there's now they've been breeding back, and so they're not totally extinct. But they were one of the largest type birds of the time. So
Right, yeah.
But the fact is that it looked at me, stared right at me, turned and looked forward, and started trotting, and opened its wings and made a couple flaps, and then vanished. So now that was the beginning, and then of course I think I mentioned just where the craft landed behind the house, and then I was asked to go now to become a representative between our species and theirs. As fate would have it, after my tenure with the space program Apollo, and when I retired from the Boeing company as a flight instructor on 737s, I got picked up by NASA JPL. Now, the JPL's got a very torrid history, events of how they came into being, but and I became one of the few solar system ambassadors, and I think a rather unique title from thinking back of what I was picked to do. My job was to go to organizations, clubs, schools, and give lectures about what we were accomplishing in the space program. And that was great up until Mr. Hoagland's book came out, and they started quoting about 400 times in the book. I was his secret NASA person that had information for him. Anyway, so then I got a phone call from the lady who's in charge of the Solar System Ambassador Program for JPL, and because my former friend and the debunker that Bret wouldn't tell them was James Oberg, had called them and told them that that what I had come forward to in the book, and that they needed to get me out of it, get rid of me. So the lady said, we think you should resign. And I said, well, why? I mean, she said, well, because we don't think you don't have the same basic attitude. You're not supporting what we think. And I said, well, wait a minute. Don't other people have their opinions about ETs and possible bases and things like that? And she said, oh yeah, a lot of them do. I said, and they're paid employees? She said, yes, they're paid employees. I said, now, I'm doing this as a volunteer, and I'm not being paid, but you want me to resign? She said, well, we think it's in the best interest of everyone if you resign. I said, no, I'm not going to resign. You can fire me if you want to. So, and that was the end of the conversation. Well, 2 days later, I received a letter terminating me as a solar system ambassador, also on the same day that Mr. Hoagland flew me to Washington, D.C. to be one of the, I guess they had about a dozen scientists and engineers that were coming forward to speak before the National Press Club in Washington, D.C. So that's when I first came public with it, but it was as a result of being terminated by JPL as a solar system ambassador.
Wow.
Fascinating.
And that stuff keeps going on and on. There's still more in there, so you're going to have to help me find it all.
So we will. And so the story you said about, going up on board the ship and being shown things and flying the ship, we're hearing that from a lot of different contactee experiencers. So it's I know you haven't been here listening to the stories, but in fact yesterday, and I won't name the name, Dr. Lessin worked with somebody, and she had a very similar story. So this is fascinating, hearing it within 24 hours of Dr. Lessin doing a session with somebody else. I don't want to pollute your protection.
It's going to be so exciting to be at the UFO Congress that's going to be this coming week. I'm looking forward to that. And then also come this October here in Albuquerque, New Mexico, is going to be the experiencers. We are the disclosures.
We are disclosures. Yes, in Albuquerque.
Right, and I'm going to be at both of these, and I'm really excited about a chance to be face to face and meet with. I hope a couple of these other people that have come forward, like Donna Hare and the other two guys, that meet them for the first time. It's going to be quite an experience.
So, part of it making it happen is putting your desires and wishes out there, and before you know it, we're manifesting it. So we will make it so.
So, to what degree is this just American intelligence and military, or to what degree is it are the Russians and non-allies involved in the space program? What do you think about that?
I've talked with this to people that I think were in the know, and I think there is some evidence of the non-public space program, if you will, and where the agreement between Russia and the other major organizations are working together to try to keep things under control, because it will make a change in the way in which society is perceived and functions. So a lot's going on. It's amazing to be right in the middle of it, too.
Yeah, I remember them that there was an Apollo Soyuz program as well.
Uh-huh.
And that was a co-op program with the American or U.S. NASA space program and the Russian space programs with the cosmonauts and all.
Yep, Bret, that program, I actually worked with them. It was showing that space was to be a free zone and no political problems involved there. And it was great. I have signed autographs from the two Russian cosmonauts that rendezvoused with Deke Slayton. Finally got to go into space, and he was the original seven, so that was awesome. One of the other things that took place close to that, and wait a minute, here I'm going here. Sasha, there's so much going on. Anyway, go ahead, Bret. You're good with it.
Well, I had a question whenever you have a chance. Well, basically, you've seen all these photos, and you kind of have an outline of what's going on where and the different facilities and the artwork. What do you think happened, and what do you think is going on? What's your hypothesis?
Well, what I think is going on is a complexity, that has changed because the truth changes. Back then there was a very strict militarized, industrial complex type restriction on information because it was still like post-Cold War type of a scenario, and there was still a lot of distrust, even though in the public eye we were like trying getting allies, that were once our enemies and all this jazz. There was a Cold War feeling during the Apollo program, and back then it was a very strict security issue. So they were the thought form was national security and to maintain a contingency and all that, or to maintain a continuity of government and all that stuff. And what's going on now is their continuity of government, their trade agreements and everything else have caused such a nightmare in society and politically and religiously and financially and all of that. It is chaotic, and they need a way out. They need a way to start or begin to start over. So that means a re-education of what was really going on behind the scenes. And you'll notice that a lot of things will be coming out not just with the space program, but with the financial system as well. They've come out with the movie that illustrates exactly what happened during the housing crisis. They're starting to come out with these things that what really happened behind the scenes. And this is absolutely necessary for people to regain or reconstitute any form of hope or any form of trust for their government or for these corporations or for whoever's in charge of all this, these families or whatever. They know that there needs to be some kind of contingency plan, and one of those aspects is soft disclosure.
Right. So looking at the moon and the different facilities, did they have mining? Was it a spaceport for like on Star Wars or Star Trek with other beings coming in? Do you think it was all, our secret space program? What do you?
And is it hollow?
And is it hollow? Yes.
Yes, I think it's very complex. I think as far as the secret space program, I think that is a world co-op.
Yes.
I don't think it's just the United States that has a secret space program, for instance, because they're sharing too much information overtly with the Chinese, with India, with the ESA and Europe and all that. So it's the secret space program is the families that run the world, are kind of in charge of overlooking those things. So there is that complexity. It is very complex. It's not as easy just to say, well, are there UFOs or aren't there, or something, or are there aliens or aren't there? So everything's not just black and white. People are very creative, and we've caused a complexity, no doubt. Over the years, everyone has contributed to the morphogenics of this complexity. And it is a puzzle. It's one that we can figure out as a human race, We can eventually figure this puzzle out.
Is it hollow?
Yeah, what do you think of that?
Yes, I believe that the moon and the Earth are similar, that they are partially hollow. In other words, I believe it's sort of like a sponge, like a honeycomb type thing, where you have veins and caverns and everything else within the Earth that interconnect, and everything else. So I think that's what the complexity is. Not exactly hollow, but I believe that it's porous. It's like a sponge.
Gotcha. I've got reports from Antarctica and this Tierra del Fuego that there's vast cavern systems with hot water and even underground cities like New Schwabenland that are under the earth. And so what you're saying makes a lot of sense to me.
Well, one of the interesting things that we did experiments on the moon is, once we finished our exploration on the moon and we got in the lunar module ascent stage and we lifted off. By the way, people say, well, how did you get the pictures of the lunar module launching off of the moon and going up space? So obviously it wasn't for real. If you had been there and realized that we had the video cameras on the lunar surface that were being remotely controlled by mission control, it took about 3 seconds to get the signal from the Earth to the moon. So we had worked it out so that when we were getting ready to do the countdown, and it had to be precisely to the second when they hit the ignition button to light the ascent stage engine to launch and get them up in orbit so they could rendezvous with the command module. Well, so 3 seconds before, they hit the button to cause the camera to start panning in an upward motion to follow. And sure enough, by the time the signal got there and the lunar module launched the upper stage, we got to watch it lift up off the lunar surface. So there was nothing magic about it or some faked station. It was for real. Now, it's just so much is going on, and it's been an awakening for both Bret and Karen to look at the proof and the documentation and the real things and realize how many hundreds of thousands of people were involved in trying to make John Kennedy's goal of going to the moon within the decade and bringing them back home. We had to do that by creating events, things that hadn't been invented yet, and it was successful. But I don't want to keep going.
I had a question.
Yeah.
What happened to the movies? You have the stills, the photographs, but what happened to the movies? Any idea?
Well, there's the archive that NASA created to keep things in, and whether or not that's the only archive is questionable, because those things that have been airbrushed out or changed with modern technology is what you're going to get if you request that. Now, they just recently released, I think, something like 5,000 pictures and something. I'm not sure what it was, but we've already pulled up a couple of pictures of things where we have my originals, and the anomalies have been photoshopped out. In fact, if you then digitized and you go in and look at them, you can see the pixels have all been changed or they've been smudged out or whatever. You're still getting what they want you to see, not what's really there. And the originals and things have got to still be in storage somewhere, and someone's got control over them. I've got the originals that I have. That's it.
Yes, I know that they went with the old Ranger mission protocols, and they put them in cold storage. And there is a facility that is run by a contractor at JPL. That's one of the cold storage facilities. There's another one at White Sands Missile Range, and then they've sent the Lunar Orbiter set over to California at the McDonald's that they store those in. So yes, they literally store them in an abandoned McDonald's on an Air Force base, and they're doing a great job. That's the Lunar Orbiter, or the Lunar Orbiter Image Recovery Project, and they're doing a great job. They're to me, I've kind of been on them. I'm like, you're kind of tampering with the originals, by fixing them or whatever. So I've kind of been on them a little bit, but I understand the whole process as well. You know what I mean? I know they're trying to make them look better for the Smithsonian Institute and all that jazz, but they should at least keep the originals in cold storage for history. Even though they want to take these out one at a time and fix the image and put them out to the public, which is fine, great, awesome. But they should actually show the public the originals that they came from as well. And I think since I said that, they started doing that. They showed the original and what they did to it.
Wow, I think you may have stimulated them to do that.
Yeah, I think so. I hope so.
Wow. Okay. Let's see. There were some questions. Oh, I lost that page. What would you like us to talk about now? We've got about half an hour left to the show.
Oh, I think the most important thing is, as I mentioned earlier, and that is I was 26 years old at the time back then, and I'm 73 years old now. I'm dyslexic. You can say I'm only 37, so that's okay. But anyway, other people such as myself, while they were still here, now I plan on living till 180 minimum, but there are other people that think they're going to die at 65, and they probably will, just since our subconscious has a great deal to do with how we age. But anyway, they need to come forward with the data and the information they have. They need to get it out for society, for humanity, for all mankind, and come forward and not be afraid that something is going to happen here, because we've now moved into this phase, as we call it, soft disclosure, where in reality we are helping them, the government, them, to come clean with the information so that we can benefit all of mankind, all of society with it. So you're out there, come forward, bring it out.
So what do you think about Edgar Mitchell's recent death, and how is that going to affect things?
I listened to the
else to reveal?
The interviews they had with Ed, Dr. Mitchell, and I was delighted that he came forward with as much information as he could, and he did. And slowly but surely, I mean, he's been forward, up front ever since he got back of telling the truth. It's just, it's kind of like when I was telling the truth and JPL came and tried to shut me down, and, they try to say, well, he wasn't there and part of that. Well, we're now well established that, yes, I was, yes, we are, yes, Edgar Mitchell was there, yes, he's coming true. Now Buzz Aldrin is coming out and saying, we had this unidentified flying object following us. More and more of this is coming forward, and it's high time. I'm glad to see it's happening in our lifetimes.
Yeah, it's great. So what do you think did any of them ever talk to you personally and tell you any stories?
Yeah, what were they mining? What are they getting? What are they digging out of the earth there?
Okay, I'm not knowledgeable. I know that Bret has done some research in there, and he probably has a better idea on that than I do.
Okay.
Well, let's hear it.
Where's Bret?
I'm here. What were they mining?
Yeah, what
Well,
are they digging for?
we asked two questions at once, and what I wanted to know is, did anybody else come out with some stories? Did Ken, have any
To answer your question,
conversations?
Sasha, gold.
Oh,
Thank
really?
you.
Brett,
Gold.
let me in here before I forget this, if I can. And I brought it forward a little earlier when we were talking about the moon ringing like a bell. When we would launch off the lunar surface and rendezvous with the command module, transfer all of our lunar samples and materials that we were going to bring back to the Earth, we would separate the command module from the lunar module and then remotely fire the engines on the lunar module to break orbit, come down, and impact on the moon. Now, I have the photographs of the seismic event that took place when that ascent stage smashed into the moon and hit it, just like oil well drillers and things. They'll use explosives or to create a shock wave down through the strata to find out what they're going to be drilling through. When this lunar module impacted the lunar surface, and it happened every time we went to the moon, the moon rang like a bell for over six days, and it started off with a large. If you ever watched the seismic thing of an earthquake on the readers, how the needle flicks back and forth, well, it starts off ringing like that, and it continues to taper down over 6 days, ringing like a bell, which means a large portions of where the impact was hollow down below.
Wow.
So does that mean it's an artificial or a natural body?
It could be either one in reality.
What do you think?
I think the moon was moved into Earth orbit because and set up in motion to create the tidal waves, the movements, the mixing of the soup to create life and to life to evolve. So evolution, even though my studies in theology, I can understand evolution as a phase there, yet I can also look at where the intervention took place, and that's amazing. But yeah, it's the moon had to be brought into orbit around the Earth to create that motion that was necessary. So to me, it could be partially hollow, somewhat like a Dyson sphere, and we have the same situation going with Phobos around Mars. The European Space Agency made a special test where they would try to transmit the signals back to the Earth at the time when Phobos was moving through the transmission area and creating a signal that they could analyze. And they said that Phobos basically was a hollowed satellite, or not a natural formed moon. So I can go either way. Either the Earth, it was brought here, part of it's hollow, or it is a hollow moon.
Thank you.
What do you think, Bret?
Yeah, it seems like they're doing a lot of mining, and they're mining plasma from the sun. They're mining possibly helium-3 or titanium from the moon. I think they used to mine the Earth for plasma in the same way, like from our aurora borealis and all that. But it's much weaker now because the sun is at a different phase. And I think a lot of this has to do with the solar cycles, as far as our immediate galaxy. And, I think the technology is far more advanced now. I think there are ways that the extraterrestrials are showing us how we can mine different things, out in space. And so it seems to me that either I don't think it's our secret space program that's mining plasma from the sun. I mean, I've seen videos where there's these invisible type craft that are coming in and sucking plasma out of the sun and then leaving.
Yes, I've seen that.
Yeah, it's very odd. I don't know if that's like a big giant natural being or something, or it's a ship. Who knows? But it's actually taking plasma from the sun.
Well, is that perhaps their propulsion system? They just go to a sun and there they go.
Yeah, it seems naturally that that's what's going on. Just looking at it naturally, I can't even fathom the technology, but just looking at the natural aspect of that, it's almost like watching something under a microscope do its thing. It's basically like a protozoa that's sucking fluid or something from another plant or something.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I've actually
that's almost
seen.
what it looks like.
I've seen actual photographs from Soho before they're touched up. Bob Evans was supplying them, where you can see this, what might be a large a ship of some kind. Something seems to be coming in from the sun. Then there's a flash from the mothership that we're calling it, and then whatever that thing coming off the sun was disappears. And so I've seen.
Yes, our friend Amy Evans, his wife, was showing me a lot of things like that, and she's actually the one that triggered my memories from when I was 15 and was shown all of those images. She showed me one image that I had seen when I was 15, and that triggered everything. His wife, Amy Evans, is the one that showed me that.
Thank you. Far out.
Oh, Bob Evans' wife?
Yes.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah,
wow.
Bob said she used to help him until she got OD'd on it.
What a synchronicity.
Oh, yeah.
Bob's a good friend of ours. Hopefully he'll be at the conference, and you guys, well, Bret won't be there, but Ken, you'll meet him.
Yep. There's a gentleman that lives here in Albuquerque who helped design the Soho spacecraft and monitored the transmissions back and forth, who he will not come forward at all. He's terrified of it. But then he and I talked, and we looked at actual earlier shots before they were brushed out of craft actually coming out of warp drive or what have you near the sun, and these have been captured on pictures. And there is a lot of science, other beings and other civilizations popping in. It's about time that maybe Earth. I want to throw in real quick my wife's theory of what the Earth is. England, Great Britain used Australia as a penal colony to put their bad people. And she believes that maybe the Earth was a penal colony, and ETs would put all of their bad genes down here, and they check in on us occasionally to see if we haven't blown ourselves up yet. So, hopefully we're getting past that phase.
Well, that's actually a theory from this, what's his name, Spencer, Lawrence Spencer. And he said he interviewed, Alien Interview, he interviewed Errol the Grey, or no, he didn't personally, but this nurse interviewed Errol the Grey. And anyway, this is basically a penal colony. That's the theory that in this Alien
My wife came up with that back in 1995, came up with that idea, so that's interesting.
Yeah, from the Anunnaki stuff, the Anu, who's the king of Nibiru, sent all his quarreling children to Earth partly to get him out of his hair.
Yeah, I agree. Makes sense to me, and the Igigi created a bit of a problems there. I'm so excited about the truth of our evolution, if you will, to become public knowledge. To me, as a theologian, I'm just as excited about the fact that our DNA was manipulated, and I'm actually proud of the fact that I'm part Anunnaki, if you want to call it that.
Absolutely. Our geneticists wanted us to do better using the Homo erectus genes. They were attracted to these genes because Homo erectus, the ancestor of Bigfoot, was compassionate, was letting other animals out of traps, was able to communicate without the kind of greed and dominance that the Anunnaki were obsessed with, and our particular geneticists hoped that by adapting their genome to Earth, that they would create a more loving species than they were, because they were terrible murderers of each other already. They had thermonuclear wars that almost wiped them out, and they brought those to Earth, and we're doing the same thing. I hope we get over it.
I do too. They actually had fun playing games and using us as pawns. And unfortunately, we learned their lessons real well, and that's one of the problems I see that mankind has been having all this time. It's about time, though, that we did mature and grow out of that and join the old intergalactic federation, for lack of a better term.
Right. So Roddenberry was right.
Yes, he was.
Yeah. So I really like what you guys are saying, because what you're doing is you're seeing the good in the heart of the disinformation, even and NASA people, and you see that their motives ultimately were appropriate for the situations in which they perceive themselves, and now we can grow past that.
Absolutely, absolutely. And like Bret was pointing out, even the debunkers going after us, whenever they ask questions or condemn something, they're opening up the fact that what they're trying to disprove comes out as a positive, proving what they've been trying to hide.
Yes.
Right.
It's like methinks the lady doth protesteth too much.
Yes, absolutely. Oh, boy.
So that brings to mind, if we get this out far and wide, how do you see this affecting, our current paradigm here? What do you think will happen as a result?
Well, it opens up questions, opens up people's minds, and hopefully they'll start, instead of chasing the taillights to work and chasing the taillights home, they might realize that there's more to mankind than just chasing the almighty dollar, that there could well be something else that's going on in the universe that we should be a part of now that we've matured. And I look at it as the opening of the door. It's time that we walk through.
Yeah, the anti-grav possibilities means the end of a controlled world in terms of finances, and the end of some of the worst pollution. And also, I get from all my contacts that the ETs are involved with Earth are not happy at all with our use of nuclear materials and nukes in space, and that it somehow disrupts the transport situation that they find desirable, and they really hate it that we're doing all this nuclear stuff. What do you think about that?
It is actually, and I can understand that and like in my wife's theory, we could still screw things up, and then if we mess up the Earth, blow it up, it can have an effect on the solar system. It can affect the whole galaxy. They have, let's say the ETs have been around long enough to have experience to know that it's to all of our advantage for us to mature as a species.
Campaign of Andrew D. Bashago, and he is here with.
Sorry, something launched. Okay, back to the show. I hit it wrong.
One of the big things is we'd love for everybody to show up at the UFO Congress in Scottsdale next week. It'd be awesome. Get to meet a lot more people there, as well as coming next October down here in Albuquerque as a We Are Disclosure. There are some events taking place right now that are crucial, I think, to the opening up and the exposing to the rest of the world what has been going on, what's going on now, and hopefully what we can look forward to in the future.
Yeah, Andy Bashago has told us that Barack Obama has promised that when he steps down from being president, he's going to reveal his travels to Mars and a lot of other things like that. I hope so.
Yeah, have you talked to Andrew Bashago, he really didn't talk much about the moon anomalies, but what do you guys think about the Mars information? Do you do any research?
I think the Mars information, is there's a lot more to that. That's a very complex structure. It seems that there are some kind of stargates or gateways, from one place to another. I have no idea how that works, but it's within the realm of Andrew's experience, which is very fascinating. I love hearing about it. I wanted to say that that there has been a lot of adversary creation on this planet, and one of the phases that we're in now is to overcome some of those things. They're falsehoods. They're false adversaries, And
yes.
When you look into the eyes of your adversary, or your false adversary, you'll see that they're just as human as you are.
Yes. So we were having a philosophical discussion here about loving your enemies, your perceived enemies, and what happens when you love your enemies. will they begin to
raising the
love you
vibration.
back?
Yes.
It's everything connected.
I think it's when
Yeah.
you love the resonant part of yourself that's like the people that you perceived as enemies. They can relax and feel a flow with you because you understand their needs, and then we can address
Yes.
each other's needs rather than
Yes.
our wants and unreasonable demands.
Yeah, you'll learn a lot about yourself to look at that. Yes.
I'd like to throw in something, an example here of exactly what you're saying, and because I grew up it was in the Marine Corps during the Vietnam era, and back in the times at NASA, and I was driving to and from home, and I'm listening to the radio, and it was at the time when the press was releasing events and things happening in Vietnam which are atrocious, and they were talking about a squadron running across a rice paddy, and then the machine gunners open up and they're shooting him down, and the guy's hit the ground, and the guy he turns his buddy over, and he's been shot, and he's bleeding, and he died right in his arms, and he looks at his wallet, he's looking at a picture of his wife and his kid, and I'm just, tears are pouring down my eyes, and I'm driving home, and I'm in shock about how horrible that was. And then the reporter says, and his name was Donoc Tran, North Vietnamese. And I realized at that moment that we're all humans. We're all human beings. We just look a little different. And that was an awakening for me.
Oh,
Wow.
yeah, it's just like All Quiet on the Western Front. Probably the younger people don't know what that was, but this was a movie about a French guy and a German guy who were in the foxhole together and found their humanity. And this is what brought me into the anti-war movement. I realized that human beings are one, that we feel each other, we love each other. It's our natural state, and the separation we feel has been engineered. It's not who we naturally are.
That was a movie about World War I, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Talking about the Christmas at World War One, they all stopped fighting and they celebrated Christmas together, and then went back to their foxholes and then started up the next morning fighting to kill each other. It's the controlling powers, be it even the Anunnaki back when they wanted to play games, that created and made us do these things. It was stupid.
Well, we need to just stop. Nullity, don't participate. Stop participating. So what makes us do that? I wonder. Okay, we have 9 more minutes. What would you like to cover?
Well,
Bret,
I
Ken?
enjoy these free-flowing opportunities to talk, because whenever you come up with questions and ask me, you trigger a brain cell somewhere in my little pea brain, and all of a sudden I start remembering events and things that happened. I'm more than willing, with my Ken Johnston Sr. @gmail.com email, for anything having to do with the books and what we've been talking about. I'd be glad to get with them on that. And the others, by all means, go to KenJohnstonMedia.com, and they can get that free portion of the anomalies, as well as find out about what we're doing with the other books. And we're kind of, as Karen said, that's free. But if they want to make a donation to helping us get this out to the rest of the world, we'd love to have a sponsor. Anything, it's great.
That'd be great. Do you recall any other incidences besides the one you had at 8 years old?
Oh yeah, I sure do. I was just thinking about one, and doing some studies and doing some remote viewing. Recalled an experience I had where I found myself on Mars, on the edge of a canyon, a cliff, or what have you, and I explain this to people when I talk about a remote viewing. If you perceive yourself in it, you're not there in your physical form. You're just a spirit in your naked in all aspects. Anyway, and I just simply lean forward, and I lift out my arms, and I lift off and sail forward, and I travel over the surface of Mars, and I actually flew over ancient ruins and could actually see where they had been at times, and then on over lively activities that were going on at the time, and that was quite an experience. And that's going to be fun to find out how much is real in my brain and how much is great science fiction that I've seen.
I saw a movie on YouTube where they had the ruins, and they were just like buildings here on Earth, and they were saying that the Russians had built a base there Have you heard anything about that? And then Dr. Lessin has a question after that.
There's some latest information that came out about, Mars has 1/3 of the Earth's gravity primarily, and the atmosphere is equivalent of trying to breathe and live at 150,000 feet altitude. There's not that much oxygen up there. However, if you get down in the canyons or in some of the craters on Mars, where they're several miles deep, that in the bottom of them the atmosphere is thick enough and sufficient amount of oxygen that I'm hearing that it might be possible that we wouldn't have to have spacesuits to come outside of our habitats if located in one of these lower terrain areas on Mars. And that's a fascinating idea to me, that we wouldn't have to go around the bulky spacesuits, and I've worn them for hundreds of hours. So.
Yeah, Enki reports, on his way to Earth when he needed to get water, he landed on Mars, and they found the atmosphere thin but breathable, where they landed in a crater where there was water at the bottom. This is 450,000 years ago. And so that we've got these reports that the Anunnaki dictated to their scribes about just what you're saying, exactly.
And I've read some of Sitchin's books and stuff, but I'd never read that part before. That's fascinating. It's amazing how sometimes knowledge supports history, and history supports knowledge.
Yeah,
it's
and
great.
I want you to know that you may be it may be a spurious dichotomy between what you imagine or see an image and what you think is 3D reality, and that we may spontaneously our brain parses things, but this is a holographic universe with fractals of everything that there is within each of us, and we each have different angles, so we're closer to some aspects which are clearer than others, but it's all there. So remote viewing isn't just what's viewing outside or inside. That's a dichotomy that we make just for our convenience, or at least this is an interesting way to think about it.
That's fantastic. Wow. And I am really looking forward to that, because it's going to bring out a lot more information that I will be able to share with people without concern of credibility, what have you. And I no longer have to do that. If it's my reality, then that's what I want to know.
Yes.
Bret, we haven't heard from you in a while.
He's getting ready to come on.
Okay.
Hi, everybody.
Okay.
I just wanted to give Ken a lot of time, because he was really saying some good things, and I didn't want to interfere with that. But yes, I would. There's so many amazing things going on, and now people are into these conspiracy theories and these very dark conspiracies, evil, and all this jazz. And really, they need to let it go not only for their own health, but for the simple reason that they can't do anything about it. And the thing about that is it's all completely manipulated. They need to let that go. There is truth in it. It is a complexity. But they need to let that go and raise the vibration so that we don't have to put up with all that anymore.
Beautiful.
So we have just 2 minutes. What would you like to say?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were still talking to Bret.
Whoever wants to share.
Only
the 2 minutes.
The 2 minutes, and I don't know how to sum it all up other than this. So much has happened in the past less than a year, and working with these fine people here to be able to make available to the rest of the world those things that I was privy to be a part of is worth everything to me, and I'm just overwhelmed with the people that I'm running into, such as yourselves, and that are not being controlled by government and organizations and things that want to push their own agenda, that are interested in opening up the truth to all of mankind, humankind. And I was actually in the final running for the Mars One Society to be one of the Go and Colonize Mars, until all of a sudden we got down to the final 100 and they eliminated me and said I was, I guess, too old or something. Or I think it was because they knew I was coming out and telling the truth about things, and they have to go along with the timeline that they're locked into. So it may wind up, I don't know that Inky would still be willing to give me a ride to Mars, but I'm still open to go.
Well, he might be able to rejuvenate you. Go ahead, Sasha, comment.
Enki is here and in contact with people, and you can directly request him to communicate with you, set up a situation, perhaps in a sacred place, get other people, if you would, to meditate with you, and ask for contact. He is here, and this is the dawning of the age of Aquarius. Indeed.
So your website, one last time before the music comes on,
is KenJohnstonMedia.com KenJohnstonMedia.com, and the email they can contact me there is KenJohnstonSenior@gmail.com.
And what's the title of your books?
Ken Johnston's Moon, or Ken's Moon, Ken's Moon.
Ken's Moon.
It's a series of Ken's Moon. There's 2 volumes out now and about 3 more to come.
Wow, that's fascinating. Well, we're all going to be at the International UFO Congress, so we're heading out there. Dr. Les and I are heading out there tomorrow. And Ken and Karen will arrive whatever day that was, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and we look forward. Please come over and say hello to us.
Thanks so much. We enjoyed our rap.
Ken and Bret.
Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
Who owns you? If you're not in control, then someone else is. Join me, Ivy West, for Voices on the Wind, Saturday from 4 to 6 p.m. Eastern in Studio A. I discuss government, health, metaphysics, suppressed science, universal mysteries, little-known incredible facts, alternative energies, and even more than you can imagine. Won't you join us on Revolution Radio Saturdays from 4 to 6 p.m. Eastern for Voices on the Wind with me, Ivy West.
There are lives in the balance, people under fire, children at the cannons.
Because if your head's in the sand, your tail is a target.